I think it's going to work. You never know your luck.
Yep, it says it's working.
I hope so.
Yeah, it says it's been sent to a third party, so it's working.
I think it's going to work. There you go. Right, let's switch that off. Right, fantastic. So let's go back to where we're meant to be. I think that's there. Good, wonderful. Baruch Hashem. All right. So let's get started. We've got a double bill today. Isn't that what they call it? You know, when you go to the cinema and you've got two films. So we're going to have a double bill. All right. Yeah. So let's start off with our tefillah. Here it is. Now let me share the screen. Share, go. Wonderful. Okay. All right. So let's dedicate our learning for the hostages so that God should find the way to bring them out as quickly as possible. Amen. ריבון עולמים ואדוני אדונים, אב רחמן וסליחות, מודים אנחנו לפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו, בקידה בשטח הוויה שקרבתנו לתורתך ולעבודתך עבודת הקודש, ונתת לנו חלק בסודות תורתך הקדושה, מה אנו ומחיינו, אשר עשית עמנו חסד גדול כזה, על כן אנחנו מפילים תחנוננו לפניך, שתמחול ותסלח לכל חטאותינו ועוונותינו, ואל יהיו עוונותינו מבדילים בינינו לבינך, וכן יהי רצון מלפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו, שתכונן את לבבינו ליראתך ולרעתך, ותקשיב אוזניך לדברינו אלה, ותפתח לבבינו הערל בסודות תורתך, ויהיה ליבנו זה נחת רוח לפני Right, I got muddled up. וכן יהי רצון לפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו, שתכונן את לבבינו ליראתך ולרעתך, תקשיב אוזניך לדברינו אלה, ותפתח לבבינו הערל בסודות תורתך, ויהיה לימודנו זה נחת רוח לפני כיסא כבודך קרח ניחוח, ותאציל עלינו אור מקור נשמתנו בכל בחינתנו, שיתנוצצו ניצוצות עבודיך הקדושים, אשר על ידם גלית דבריך אל העולם, וזכות אבותם, וזכות תורתם ותמימותם וקדושתם, יעמוד לנו לבל נכשל בדברים אלו, ובזכותם תראיננו במה שאנו לומדים, כמה נעים זמירות ישראל, גל עיני והביטה נפלאות מתורתך, כי אדוני ייתן חוכמה מפיו דעת ותבונה, יהיו לראות צאני מפיו, ויגון ליבי לפניך, Adonai Tzori v'Gorali. Amen. Can you hear that song? Okay, fantastic. All right, great. So now then, let's get started. So the one I'm going to start off with is Parshat Shavua, okay? Because there's a rule actually, it's a very useful rule in the Gemara, which says what is a fixed thing you do first, okay, takes precedence over something which is not fixed, okay? So like if you're looking at, whether you should prepare for Shabbos or prepare for Purim, for example, well, Shabbos would take precedence, okay, because what you do on a regular basis takes precedence over what you sometimes do, okay? So like sometimes things crop up. Should I stick to my regular Torah learning if I'm invited to, I don't know, a cup of coffee with a friend? And the answer is you stick to your regular Torah learning, because what you do on a regular basis according to Halakha takes precedence over what happens, occasionally. So this is a sort of useful general rule. Okay, so we're going to follow the general rule, and we're going to start with Parshat Shavua. Okay, so the Parshat Shavua we're going to start off with is Parshat Tezaveh, and there's a very lovely little piece here from Rabbi Baruch Shalom Ashlag. Now let me just change my share so you can actually see something. There you go. All right, there, hopefully. Okay. Right. Veikhu elecha shemen zayit zach, and you shall take for yourself pure olive oil. Okay, and this is for the menorah. All right. Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani said, Elecha, for you, veloli, not for me. Lo la'orani tzarich, I don't need any light. It's kind of like he's putting the words in God's mouth, ke'ilu. And this is quoted in the Gemara. And then further on in the Gemara, in a different place in the Gemara, it says, Michutz la'parochet, ha'idut bo'el mo'ed. The menorah was placed outside the curtain, okay, as a testimony in the tent of meeting. So the tent of meeting, the Al Mo'ed, and the Beit HaMikdash was built on the same pattern afterwards, okay, as the Mishkan, was divided into two, okay? The bigger part was where they had the menorah, the lechem hapanim, the showbread, and the little altar for the incense. Okay, that was in sort of like the main part, if you like, or the bigger part. Then there was the curtain, and then behind the curtain was the Kodesh HaKodeshim, the Holy of Holies, which contained the ark. All right. So he said it's on outside of the curtain, okay, as a testimony in the tent of meeting. So what's the testimony? Eduthu l'kol ba'ei olam. It's a testimony for all the inhabitants of the world, shashchina shora b'Yisrael, that the divine presence is dwelling in Israel. Ve'im tomar orani tzarich. And if you were to ask, well, why do I need light to be the testimony? Surely, all 40 years that the children of Israel went in the wilderness, they only went according to his light. But it is testimony for all the inhabitants of the world that the divine presence is reigning in Israel. What sort of a testimony is this? Amar Rabbah said, this is the western candle, which gets the same amount of oil as all the other candles, from which it would light and where it would finish. So what are we actually talking about here? We're talking about the menorah, okay? And the menorah itself, okay, was the sort of stand, all right, on which, on each of its branches was put the candle, all right? So you've got 7 clay candles put on each of the golden branches. Do you see what I mean? As far as I know, they were clay. I don't know. Maybe the actual candles were themselves gold. I don't know. That's an interesting question. I can't remember. Okay. But anyhow, you've got the candelabra itself, which is the menorah, and on top of each of the 7 branches, there was the candle. Now, the candle it was talking about is you've seen these clay pots, okay, and which the oil went in to the pot, and you had a little hole from which the wick was. Okay, so the actual candle wasn't a stick of paraffin or something. It was a vessel with oil. Okay, now the Ner Maravi, what's called the Ner Maravi, the most western candle, there's a little bit of a machloket, there's a bit of a discussion in the Gemara between Rashi and Rambam, I think it is, well, it wouldn't have been the Gemara, but there's a discussion anyhow in the Halacha, which was the central candle, the Ner Maravi. One of them says it was the central candle, and the other one said it was the most western candle. It depends what the orientation of the menorah actually was. But that doesn't really matter. What it really matters here is that it would get exactly the same amount of oil as all the other candles, okay, exactly the same amount, but its light would last much longer, okay? It would get the same amount and its light would be, you know, kind of like all the time kind of thing. It just never really went out. It was all the time lasting much, much longer than the amount of oil that was given. So this is the candle that Rabbi is saying is the testimony that the Shekhinah is dwelling in Israel. So Rabbi Baruch Shalom has got quite a lot of questions about this. So let's see what he says. Number one, איזה טיפש יכול לומר שהקדוש ברוך הוא צריך שישראל יאירו לו? והקדוש ברוך הוא צריך לאור גשמי? He says, what's the question even really about? What, it would be so foolish even to think that the Holy Blessed One needs Israel to give light for him, because the Holy Blessed One what does he need any physical light for? And two, למה צריך להביא ראייה מהמדבר, שיסלחו לאור של עמוד האש, ובלי היה מה הייתי אומר? Why does he give testimony from the time that the children of Israel went by the light of the pillar of fire in the wilderness? I mean, surely the fact that we go via God's light all the time, whether in the wilderness or not in the wilderness, what does that actually tell us? So what does he want to tell us here? Hamatrahi leitiv, the purpose of creation is to give goodness to all created beings. והמקבלים שלוקחים ההטבה, פירוש שמקבלים את אור השם, and the receivers who are actually receiving the goodness means that we receive the light of God. And this depends on how much we're able to adjust our vessels of receiving so that they would be in affinity of form with the Creator. They will be fit to receive the light of the Creator, because from God's perspective, he's able to give the light all the time. Whether we're able to receive the light is our issue, okay? That we need to actually correct the vessel, if you like, prepare the candle, all right, so it's able to receive the light. Mitzad Yisrael. This is the light that comes from the side of Israel. The power of work of the people of Israel, how much work we're able to do to correct our vessels of receiving so that they should be fit to receive the light. And as we know, if we don't do the work, then the Holy Blessed One isn't able to give to us the highest amount, the high giving, the great light that he wants to give us, because there's no affinity of form. And this is a spiritual rule, okay? That the light can only come into the vessel if the vessel is in affinity of form. So what does that actually mean? It means that our original vessel, which is created within us, which is our will to receive ourselves alone, needs transforming, needs to be its direction turned in the other direction, okay? So that we're not using our wills to receive just for receiving, okay? But we're actually wanting to become more like the Creator, wanting to give, wanting to give loving kindness. And it can be to God, it can be to a fellow human being, okay? So long as we're in affinity of form, that will help bring the two elements, the light which is giving and the vessel which is receiving. If we can transform it so that our receiving is only for the sake of giving, or that we're using our powers of receiving, only to give. That's also possible. Okay, that will bring the two elements together, and then the light can flow into the vessel. And we as human beings will be able to receive the blessing and the goodness of God's light. But if our vessels are not turned around, if we're not transformed, if we're just, acting as if this whole issue doesn't exist, we're not actually able to receive the light. But then he says something interesting. But can we really limit God in this way? And say, can we really say that if we don't do the work, okay, God still can't give to us? שהקדוש ברוך הוא היה מאיר להם בלי התעוררות. ומשום זה אכלו לחם מן השמיים, היינו בלי עבודה. In fact, why does the sage here bring proof from the wilderness that the Holy Blessed One can give us light, even if we haven't done the work? What do we actually know from the wilderness? For example, they ate bread from heaven. The manna came down, and they didn't have to do any work for it. It just came. Only when they came into the land, then was given to them the perfection, Hanikra lechem min haaretz, bread from the land. Okay? In other words, that's actually a higher level. You would think, just getting manna from heaven without doing any work sounds like a higher level. But in fact, a more perfect level is a level where the light of God and the vessels are actually functioning together. Okay, and we can look at this in a minute. Why is that a higher level? That when we actually do the work, it's better than when we don't, and God just gives it. So therefore, he goes on to say, but we'll go back into that idea in a minute. לכן אפילו כשישראל היו עושים את המנורה במקדש, ניתנה להם העדות, שידעו שהשכינה שורה בישראל, אפילו בלי התעוררות דלתתא. So when the children of Israel were making the menorah in the sanctuary, okay, this menorah actually gave them testimony that they should know that Shekhinah is abiding in Israel, even without our work from below. Ki ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu zakuk li'orah shel Yisrael. Because the Holy Blessed One doesn't need our work. From that perspective, היינו להכשרתם, כי אם צדקת מה תיתנו, אלא זה רק לטובת האדם שלא יהיה נהמה דכסופה. What he's saying is, the reason why we're given the work to do is in order that we should not have the bread of shame. Okay, but does not limit God. It's from our side. When God doesn't give us the light because we haven't transformed our vessels yet, then that's in a way, God urging us on to transform the vessels. But every so often, okay, God does give us light, even though we haven't actually deserved it. All right? Because God himself from his side is not limited. All right, somebody put something in the chat. Is there a copy we can receive of this reading? I haven't actually made one. It's from a book. It's from the Birkat Shalom. But I could probably figure out a way to get you to copy it or something. But I am recording it, and it will go up on YouTube, so you'll be able to watch it again. Okay. ולכן באה עדות מצד נר מערבי. So what's the evidence of this? That God can, in a sense, override his own rules. All right? This comes from the Western candle. All right? It would give light via miracle, basically. And the miracle was above nature. The Holy Blessed One created the world with a nature. And the issue is usually, and this is the usual issue, that we're able to receive the joy only according to how much work we've done. לכן, כשנותנים חצי לוג שמן, אז יגיע הזו של חצי לוג. שיעור החכמים מספיקה, שיהיה דולק מערב עד בוקר. So, for example, they would put half a log of shemen, of oil, into the candles. Okay, each one got half a log. All right, and that was that the sages figured was sufficient that the candle would light from the evening to the morning. Okay, but they would give them the Western candle exactly the same amount as all the other candles, but it would light for much, much longer. Okay, all right. If that seems to follow that it was shining via miracle and not according to the amount of oil. Okay, so if you were to translate that idea into our work, okay, it does seem to us, and I'm sure each one of us has experience of this, that we get insights, we get understandings, we get, the feeling of the light of God shining upon us, even when in fact, okay, we don't think that we've done sufficient to actually receive that. Okay, we know that our wills to receive ourselves alone aren't yet rectified, and then suddenly, never mind, we still get a wonderful, loving insight from God. Okay, so what does this mean? As I רואים מזה שהקדוש ברוך הוא יכול להשפיע שפע אפילו בלי מעשה התחתונים, that God is able to give of his bounty even without the work of the lower ones, even without the work, without our work, basically, or without our work being sufficient. So, in other words, what does this mean? It means that from the general way is the amount of light we're able to receive is according to, number one, our desire for it, and number two, how much we're able to have done some work in giving, okay, unconditionally. All right, to be an affinity form of the Creator. But that's from our side. Does that limit God? No. From his side, he's able to give us light even when our vessels are not clean, and even vessels when we haven't done the work properly. Now then, what happens as a consequence? We find Rabbi Ashlag writes about this actually in the Parshat of Ba'alotecha, when the issue of the Menorah comes up again. He writes about this, and he says, if when we receive light without having worked for it, then we have to add the work. Okay, there's a principle in the Gemara which says, Yagati umatzati ta'amin. I did the work and amatzati, the light came, believe it. All right. Lo yagati v'matzati al ta'amin. If I didn't do the work and the light came, don't believe it. But that seems to be the issue here. And he says, if you don't add the work, okay, then you just lose it again. All right. So, but nevertheless, we do see from this testimony of the candle, of the central candle, that God himself is not bound by our work, but he can give us his love and his benefit and his goodness, even if we haven't done the work. All right. So that, I think, was a very beautiful understanding there. Okay, great. So now I want to move on to Parshat Zachor, okay, before the one Parshat Zachor before Purim, okay? מהו העבודה שקוראים פרשת זכור לפני פורים? Can you see this okay, or do I need to change the, I don't know if I have to change the thing or not, the sharing. I don't know, I'll do it anyhow. So you have to be safer, better be safe than sorry. How about that? Okay. So why do we read Parshat Zachor before Purim? Again, this is from Rabbi Baruch Shalom Ashlag. HaKatuv Omer, the scripture says in Parshat Ki Teitzei, Zachor et asher asa lecha Amalek b'derech b'bitzeitchem miMitzrayim. Remember what Amalek did to you when on the way when you were coming out of Egypt. Asher korcha b'derech, as he happened to you on the way. Timchet zecher Amalek mitachat hashamayim. Blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under the heavens. Lo tishkach, don't forget. Okay? So first of all, we need to remember what he did, and then we have to blot it out. Okay? ויש להבין מהו העניין שצריכים לזכור מה שעשה לנו עמלק בכדי לקיים תמחת זכר עמלק. Okay? Well, that we just said. Why do we have to remember what Amalek did to us in order to blot it out? כי משמע, ואם לא זוכרים מה שנעשה לנו עמלק, לא יכולים לקיים תמחת זכר עמלק. Or it's clear that if we don't remember what Amalek did to us, then we can't blot out the memory of Amalek. שיכולים למחוק דווקא בדיוק רק כמה שיש לנו זכר ממנו. We need to blot out precisely the amount that we have a memory from it, ולא יותר, and not more. ויש להבין בעבודה, so we need to understand in our inner work, מה שאומר תמחה זכר עמלק. What does it mean to blot out the memory of Amalek? ואם אין לו זכר, לא יכולים למחוק. And if we don't have any remembrance or any idea of what Amalek did, we can't blot it out. ולכן ניתנה לנו מקודם מצווה. So before we can fulfill the mitzvah of blot out the memory of Amalek, we have a previous mitzvah to fulfill, and that is remember what Amalek did to you. ואחר כך שכבר יש לנו בחינת זכר עמלק, and when we've got now the sort of clear understanding of what Amalek did, אז יכולים לקיים מצוות מחיית עמלק. Then we can fulfill the mitzvah of blotting out Amalek. הנה ידוע שאין אור בלי כלי. It's known that there is no light without a vessel. ואין מילוי בלי חיסרון. And there is no fulfillment without lack. ולכן אין אדם מסוגל לעשות שום דבר אם אינו צורך לאותו דבר. And therefore a person is not able to do anything if he hasn't got a need for that matter. אם כן, אין אפשרות לקיים מחיית עמלק. There is no possibility to fulfill blotting out Amalek, if a person hasn't got the need to blot it out. Klomar, Adam lo yodea ma ze Amalek. That is to say, a person doesn't know what is Amalek. And then why do we need to do this action of blotting it out? We need to first of all understand clearly what is Amalek, and we need to know what troubles he makes for us. And therefore, once we've got this clear measure of what troubles he does for us, to that same extent, we are able to fulfill blotting out the memory of Amalek. Okay? And if a person doesn't remember that he did many troubles to us, then we don't have the need to blot it out. So why does Rabbi Ashlag go over this a few times? the thing is, he's not talking about remembering in history, okay? He's not talking about remembering what it's written and remembering the story that when the children of Israel came out of Egypt, okay, and they were wandering around in the wilderness and they came to a place with no water, and then they had to fight Amalek. Okay, so we know the history, we know the story of what happened, okay, and now we have to remember how Amalek pounced on us, and then of course we've got all the history of Amalek with Haman and Hitler, Mashamo, so now we have to blot it out. But that doesn't make any sense, okay? I can't blot out something historically, all right? What does it mean to blot something out historically? That's not what Rabbi Ashlag's talking about at all. What he's talking about is where is the aspect of Amalek in me? Okay, what is the Amalek within me? And what troubles is it causing me? All right? Now, in the present, Rabbi Ashlag's not interested in history. He's talking about the Zohar talks about that a person in himself is a whole world, okay? Which means that all the elements in the world are found within the same person. So within myself, there is an Amalek, okay? And I need to know clearly what that Amalek is and what he does, okay? I can remember the troubles it causes me, all right? And then I can blot it out. All right, so that's why he's gone over this a few times, because he wants us to be clear that we're not talking about something outside of ourselves. We're talking about trying to find the Amalek within us. Okay, what does Amalek cause us? Okay. נמצא שאי אפשר לקיים מחיית עמלק רק בשיעור שהוא זוכה את הצורות שעשה לו. We can only fulfill blotting out Amalek according to the measure that we actually remember the troubles that he did for us. ולכן הכנה למחיית עמלק צריכה להיות שאדם צריך לדעת מהו עמלק. So we need to know what is Amalek and what's the job of Amalek נגד Israel. And the Amalek is the will to see for ourselves alone. Okay? כשאדם עושה חשבון לנפשו. So when a person makes a self-accounting, ורוצה לראות מי הוא השונא שלו, who is the one inside myself who is hating him, וגורם לו רק רע, okay, and causes him so much damage, okay, all right? הוא מבין שהוא רצון לקבל אותו אל עצמו. He sees that it is his own will to receive oneself alone. And it's called the evil inclination. Why is it called the evil inclination? Because he causes us evil. He disturbs a person. And it stops a person being able to get to the situation where he's able to transform his vessels so he's able to receive the good and joy that the Creator wanted to give. Therefore, when a person goes deeply into this idea, and he comes to feel that a person really feels how much his will to receive is his enemy. In the measure of this, he needs to actually be able to feel the suffering, the bitterness, the anger, the separation that our will to receive caused us. But it's only in this measure is a person prepared to burn it away from the world, like wipe it out of the world. So this is really, really, really a powerful statement. This is not so straightforward. I mean, what are we talking about? We're talking about a part of ourselves. Okay, we're talking about our will to receive. Okay, and our will to receive for ourselves alone gives us, instant gratification. All right? It gives us, supposing somebody insulted us. Supposing somebody tried to steal from us. Okay? I'm not saying we shouldn't respond to these issues in an appropriate way, but we need to respond from a way which is going to stop the damage. Okay, but obviously we're not here to be, to allow ourselves to be stolen from or something. Okay, but in a way which is not actually going to perpetuate the cycle either, and not in a way which is going to just feed our ego and not look and see, maybe I caused something, whatever, not without any sort of awareness. Our will to receive for ourselves alone means that we're looking for our own self-comfort first without looking at other people. We want to snatch, we want to grab, okay? That's our nature. There's greediness, there's anger, there's all sorts of different aspects called our will to receive for ourselves alone, okay? So to actually be able to say, I can see what damage it's doing to me. The most damage that it does is, number one, when we just focused on our own receiving, it cuts us off on the Creator. It cuts us off from the Creator, cuts us off from our life source. So it does us personal damage, but also the sages tell us it's the source of all the holocausts, the ecological damage, the murders, the poverty in the world. Actually, it doesn't take much to really think about it. And you can see how much damage a person's greed can actually cause in the world. Okay, so it causes personal damage, it causes damage to our families, it causes damage to the environment. All right, so the more we can actually feel how much that Amalek really is damaging for us, that's the extent that we'll be able to want to wipe it out. Okay, and like I say, it's not such an easy thing, because on the other hand, it's also a source of our own, personal, instant gratification kind of stuff. All right. So we need to actually be aware of the damage in order to be able to blot it out. Blot out Zecher. What's Zecher? Zecher is from the word Zachor. Zachor, usually it's to blot out the memory of Amalek, but the word Zachor in the Kabbalah, the male aspect, refers to the giving aspect. So you can also translate that as blot out what Amalek gives you. Okay? Now, other people talk about Amalek as doubt. All right? I'm trying to serve Torah and mitzvot. I'm trying to get on my way to Mount Sinai. Okay, and what happens? Amalek. And where does this idea of Amalek being doubt? Because just before the children of Israel had to find Amalek, they quarreled with Moses over the lack of water. I mean, there's no doubt about it. God deliberately took them to a place where there was no water, I guess, for them to sort of see how they would respond to it. okay, whether they would remember to pray to God or whether they would simply complain and attack Moses, which unfortunately is what they did. Nevertheless, okay, God gave them water by Moses hitting the rock. That was appropriate at that time, okay. But then they said, is God in our midst or not? Which was, after all the miracles they'd just seen, which seems to be very sort of off thing to say, and straight away came Amalek. So Amalek is also associated with doubt. When we're trying to stay on the path of Torah and mitzvot, okay, it's the doubt that comes and attacks us. All right. So, right, okay. From what we've understand, from what we've said, we can understand. Parshat Zachor called Lifnei Purim. Why do we need to read Parshat Zachor before Purim? Kodem kol tzrichim lavin ma'u Purim ba'avodah. So first of all, we need to understand what is Purim in our inner work. Now the issue of the importance of Purim is brought in the words of the Holy Ari in the Talmud Sefirot, and I have to say that I do not understand what is written there, so we're going to miss that paragraph. But Rabbi Ashlag explains, and that bit is easier to understand. The light that was prevalent during the days of Purim, which came into the world because it was the time for the redemption, it was the time for the rebuilding of the temple, in general, should only be shining at the end of the Tikkun, and not prior to that. Because this light, is considered as the light of the purpose of creation, the great light of Chokhmah. So this is the Or Chokhmah hamitlabesh bekelim de Kabbalah. This is the light of Chokhmah, which is clothed in the vessels of receiving. Now, since the Tzimtzum, okay, we can't use such a great light. And this is a person's desire to receive the good and joy that is present, which comes from the purpose of creation. And this light of the purpose of creation is designated as the light of Chokhmah. And you cannot shine this light without a garment. Okay, what's the garment? It needs to be clothed with the light of the correction of creation. The light of giving. It's like we said earlier, for us to be able to receive the light, we need to have corrected our vessels. And how do we do it? By giving. Okay, so we don't just receive the order Chokhmah, we have to actually clothe it first with the light of giving. And before the end of the Tikkun, the light of Chokhmah, which is called this great light, can shine together with the light of Chasadim. But a miracle took place. Due to the fast and their calling out, the people calling out to God for help. That they brought also the light of Chasadim. Then this great awe of Chokhmah was able to be clothed in the light of giving. And this was the miracle. That such a great light was shining before the end of the Tikkun. היות מצד הטבע האור הזה יכול היה רק בגמר התיקון. In a natural way, this light should only be present at the end of the tikkun, שנקרא לעתיד לבוא, in the future. ולכן אמרו חז"ל, and this is why the sages said, כל המועדים יתבטלו חוץ ממגילת אסתר. All the other festivals will be nullified except for Megillat Esther, because the light of Purim is the light שיאיר לעתיד לבוא, which will shine in the future.
Can you explain what you just, this last piece? What does it mean that the light was there before the natural light? I'm not sure I followed that.
Could you just say a question? Yeah, I can say what I said again. I'll try to say it again.
I think I understood you saying that the natural order of the way the light would have been is not how it happened in the Purim
Right.
story.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah. This great light, okay, the great light of Chokhmah, is only going to come, like all 10 sefirot of it, is only going to be shining at the end of the tikkun, at the Gemara tikkun. But suddenly it starts shining right in the middle of, in this particular story, okay, in this particular historical moment.
How do we see that?
How do we see that?
Yeah.
So Rabbi Ashlag wrote this amazing understanding of the Megillah, and in which he shows that this light is shining on Purim in many different ways. So I'll just tell you some of them that I've learned, okay? So the time that Purim takes place is the time of when the period of 70 years following the destruction of the first temple was finished, and the time has come for the building of the second temple, okay, which is an aspect of redemption, okay, because redemption implies also, like, we're also hoping for the building of the third temple, all right, and hopefully that will be it, the end of the tikkun. So the light, this great light is shining, and this is hinted at in the Su'udah, in the banquet that the king brings. Now, as we know, the Gemara tells us that although it's Ahasuerus, whenever it says Hamelech, the king, without saying Ahasuerus, it means the supreme king of kings. So nothing in the Megillah is sort of like open, like it's all Megillat Esther. It's the Megillah of what's hidden, all right? But the banquet, for example, is they bring out the kelim shonim, which is a remez. It's a hint for the vessels of the temple. And also the wine, okay, there's a tremendous emphasis on shtiyah, on the drink, a shtiyah kadat, okay? So a code word for the order chokhmah, which we're talking about here, is wine, all right? Yayin, okay? So that's one of the words in the Zohar, which it means the order chokhmah. And the whole discussion which goes on about how they were able to drink at this banquet, it was called Shtiyah Kadat, that the drinking was Kadat, okay? And what does that actually mean? And Kadat ein honest, no compulsion. They could actually choose whether they were able to receive this great light through this aspect of giving, or through the way of Mordechai, or the way of Haman, okay? And the Jews went to the banquet and they started to drink. They started to receive this light, because the word drinking again, is a word which is a code word for receiving. If you think about drink, we just receive it. We don't have to do any work for it. We just comes in our bodies and it's received. Okay. And the way of Mordechai was to say, no, the purpose of this great light is not for us to receive it. The purpose of this great light is to simply use it as testimony that the way of faith is the right way. And so you have this confrontation between Mordechai and Haman, which is a confrontation between how do we relate to the great light of God when it comes into reality in the universe. Okay? And I think it's a very important understanding, because I'm sure we're going to be faced with this soon. You know, we are the generation which is getting closer and closer to Mashiach. And when the end of the Tikkun will come and more light will come into the world, the question is, how are we going to handle it? Are we going to be like Haman and grab it for ourselves, okay, and get drunk on it, okay, which is because the light of God is incredibly attractive for us? Or are we going to use our aspects of giving and the modesty which is appropriate to the Jew, and the humility which is appropriate to the Jew, and what we're going to do is we're going to just basically say thank you, but use it as testimony that the way of faith, the way of giving, is actually the right way, that this light has appeared simply because we're doing the right thing of giving. Okay, so the whole discussion about the Purim is the discussion actually about what do we do when this great light comes into the world. Okay, all right.
Wow, thank you. Yes, beautiful. So really, it's never about sitting almost in a certain sense tranquil, like the way Yaakov, you know, wanted to sit b'shalva. Like, it's never really about that. It's always about receiving the light and like simultaneously or giving it back.
Yes, yeah, I think it is. It is. I mean, there's another aspect also. Like Haman. I mean, Haman, like all the other, it's just another name. Actually, this is what Rabbi Ashlag is really pointing out here. Haman is just another name for the will to receive oneself alone. And the biggest desire that we all have actually is the desire for spirituality. And this and connection and sort of like longing for the light of God. And this is actually a will to receive, just like any other will to receive that we have. And it's the most powerful will to receive oneself alone. It can be the most powerful will to receive oneself alone of all. And that's why we have to sort of learn how to handle our will to receive ourselves alone. Well, first with littler things, with smaller things, okay, with other things that give us pleasure, so that when this huge pleasure of the great light of redemption comes, we'll know how to handle it. And we won't just sort of grab, all right, like the children that the Jewish people did originally in Shushan. Okay, when it says that, you know, everybody was bound down to Haman and only Mordechai didn't bow down to Haman, who's it talking about? It's talking about the Jews of Dei Hashem, the servants of the king. Okay, the servants of the king were bowing down to Haman. All right, who's the servants? The Jews. Okay, because this great light is so attractive. And so what the story of Purim comes to teach us is like how to be a Mordechai. Okay, how to remember that not to bow down to Haman, not to accept that just receiving the great light because it's there is the right thing to do, but when it comes to take it as testimony that the way of faith is right. And that's also because we don't take all the light. If you think about the crossing of the Red Sea, yeah? So the sages tell us that if in the plagues in Egypt, Etzba Elohim, each one was like a finger, okay, then at the Kriyat Yam Suf, they could see like the whole hand of God, all right, and there's all this lovely mathematical bits in the Haggadah, which multiplies, how much they actually saw at the Red Sea. So what actually happens is, again, you've got this great light of God present, okay, in order to deliverance. Again, this idea of light, this great light coming to deliver the children of Israel from their enemies. All right, so the tremendous light present. Okay, so what happens? The children of Israel march on in faith. Okay, the waters divide. What does it mean, the waters divide? It means they don't take all the light. They just use it as testimony that God, the way of faith is right. So they march forward on dry land. And it says, Ve'aminu b'Hashem Moshe avdo. So even though they could see the great light, and it says that, even the smallest maidservant saw more than the Yechezkel the prophet, okay, nevertheless, they continued in faith onwards. They walked on in faith in a wilderness which is not sown. But the Egyptians, what's the aspect of the Egyptians? The Egyptians is the Pharaoh, it's the big will to receive. Okay, they come to the Red Sea and they see this tremendous light and they grab the lot. What happens by grabbing the lot? They drown. They drown basically because receiving too much light actually cuts us off from our source, because we become just overwhelmed with the will to receive oneself alone, which is the biggest will to receive there is, okay, in spirituality. And so therefore, remembering the damage that our will to receive actually does, and saying, no, I don't want to go with my will to receive myself alone. I'm going to remember the damage, remember to blot it out kind of thing, is necessary before we get to the light of Purim. Do you see what I mean? So that we have that clear understanding well in place before the light of Purim actually, until we get there. And then when we remember what the will to receive for ourselves does and how it causes us to snatch the light instead of using it as testimony that the way of faith is correct, okay, then we can blot out Amalek. And that we need to do before we get to Purim itself. All right? Okay?
Yeah, thank you. Wow.
Well, that was a great question. Thank you very much for asking it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wonderful question. Very nice. Okay, I think I want to just do this last bit. Okay? What was special about Purim? Here, B'Shabbat Amur, but I think it must be Masechet Shabbat, Amur al Mashkatu v'Yatzvun b'Tachtit Tahar, meaning that when the children of Israel came after the issue with Amalek, all right, they did tshuva. Okay, Rashi said that they arrived at Har Sinai. I mean, the whole thing was a miracle, actually, because what they saw in the battle with Amalek, they saw that the way of faith caused them to win, and the way of receiving, when Moshe lowered his hands, caused Amalek to win. So they got the idea, they got that you have to fight Amalek with faith, you have to move on in faith, okay? And so they came, Rashi says, they came to Mount Sinai in a spirit of tshuva. That was how they were able to come K'ish Echad B'Lev Echad, as one man with one heart. Because in general, the children of Israel were not able to unite very easily. They stood underneath the mountain. What does it mean? He taught them that compelled them to receive the Torah, because it was like the mountain was held like a barrel over them. And he said to them, if you receive the Torah, fine, and if not, here will be your grave. What does that mean? It means that the light of the revelation of the light of God on Mount Sinai, again, was so great, all right, that the chances of actually staying connected with God will only be able to if you receive the Torah. What's the Torah? The Torah which teaches us how to go walk forwards in faith, how to give, Okay, in fact, they did do. They received the Torah, but not a sev and nishma. First, we'll just do it out of faith. Afterwards, we'll understand what we need to understand. All right. So they knew that they had to receive the Torah. Otherwise, the light was just too much. Amar Rabba said, Afa pichein, even so, Hador kibluha bimei Achashverosh. The generation received it again in the days of Achashverosh. Dichtiv kimu v'kiblo Yehudim. They upheld, and the Jews received the Torah again. Kimu mash kiblu kvar. They upheld what they'd already received. Okay, so what did they do? They upheld the importance of faith. That's what they did. They upheld the whole system of Torah. They did tshuva. Again, they did tshuva. They understood what they've been doing by following the way of Haman. They understood because the decree of destruction, they suddenly saw how destructive it was just to receive too much light without giving. Okay? That was from the decrees of Haman's decree of destruction. That's showing us where it leads to. And they saw what they needed to do. And they called it out to God. And they did tshuva. Okay? V'kiblu Torah b'ratzon. And again, they received the Torah, but this time from their free will. Okay? You could have said it wasn't much free will if you're threatened with being murdered for being Jewish. But in fact, it was free will because, they could simply have just given up being Jewish, in a historical sense. They could have just, converted to paganism or whatever, and they would have just disappeared that way. But they didn't. That's not what they did. They said, no, we're staying as Jews, we're staying with the way of Mordechai. Mordechai is the Yehudi, and they upheld and they received the Torah. Okay, that means they took on again the way of Torah b'ratzon from their free will. Okay, and that was because on the one hand the great light was shining, but on the other hand they remained with faith. All right. Okay. Great. Baruch Hashem. So, all right, everybody have a wonderful, wonderful Shabbat.
Shabbat Shalom. And we do it in advance, Chag Sameach Purim?
Yeah, I think so. Next Thursday, obviously, we won't be able to meet. Okay, yeah. We'll all be busy with the Megillah, hopefully. All right. So, so Chag Sameach for Purim. Yeah, Purim Sameach. And and a good Shabbat.
You did that. I was laughing when you said they couldn't get together, and I thought, what is she talking about? About today, or she's talking about 2,000 years ago?
Something. It's very interesting. The children of Israel are no different now than they were then.
None.
And Rashi says that every other place that they stopped was with terrible arguments.
I mean, are we going to ever get together?
Yeah. Eventually, yes. I mean, to understand where the arguments are coming from, it's very interesting. The 12 tribes of Israel are 12 different ways of serving God.
Right.
That's what it really is. Okay? So if every single way of serving God is totally different from all the other ways, you've got 12 different ways. It means 12 different sets of people who think that they're right. Okay? And they're all different.
Anyway, thank you so much. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you so much, Ida. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have to aim for from the place of tshuva, we'll get there. Bezrat Hashem.
Amen. Hashem, yes.
Amen.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Right.
But you did that.
Yeah.
We're down to 3 now. We're not 12. We're Yisrael, Levim, and Kohanim. In our definition.
No, I mean, I personally believe that all 12 tribes are back. I think all 12.
I personally, with you, totally 100%. How come? We know everything. We know who was born, when, and we don't know where 10 tribes are. Come on.
So all 12 tribes is back, personally. I really do. I do. I think that Am Yisrael wouldn't have got lost. I
No.
think we're all here, but we just don't know which ones we are. I mean, yes, you're right. You've got Kohanim, you've got Leviim. Kohen and Levi are both the same tribe. They're both the tribe of Levi. Okay.
Yeah.
And I imagine that Yehuda is the main lots of us, but I'm quite sure. I mean, if you think about it, I can't believe that the 10 lost tribes so much would have stayed lost. I mean, they were conquered by the Assyrians. The Assyrians themselves were conquered by the Babylonians. So if they had maintained even, some connection with being Jewish between the Torah of Israel, they would have rejoined the main community in Babylonia. I think we've got representation of all 12 tribes. That's my personal view. I think that's also the reason why yes, lost means assimilated. Yes, that's my personal view as to why we have difficulty uniting.
Exactly. I was going to
because we've got so many different, ways.
exactly.
Yedida,
Anyway, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat
can
Shalom.
I ask you
That's
one thing
sure.
about the class?
Yeah.
Just one thing, like when in one person life you get a lot of light, and you are not supposed to get drunk, as you said, that you're not supposed to get it only for yourself, but it's sometimes because these are moments that you receive a lot of light, and it's difficult to understand at that moment because maybe it's unusual how you would do something that it's not like just keeping it to yourself. Like it's not like what do you do? You start what do you do? Because
it's a good question. I think
you
it's it's a good question. I think first of all, you can bless God and say thank you. That's the first thing, to acknowledge God as the origin of the light. That's be the first thing to do. The second thing to do is to actually again remember Torah and mitzvot. Put that energy into the mitzvot, because then you're actually able to do the mitzvot from a much deeper, more complete way, because you'll be able to sense and feel the light in every single mitzvah. At the moment, we do the mitzvot, and we do them, with not necessarily feeling what the mitzvah is giving us. We're doing them, just giving, and can't feel anything. But the mitzvah actually has actually got the potential for the light to be present in every mitzvah. So I think one would be able to channel that, tremendous revelation of the light of God into the mitzvot. Okay, to actually doing the mitzvot, and it could be mitzvot, but between man and God, and mitzvot ben adam l'chavero. And I think that would be a wonderful, that would be the main thing to do. You can see this also from the great sages, because many of the great sages did reach these tremendous levels of receiving the great light of God. Rabbi Ashlag for himself, he reached Dveikut, he reached union with God at a very, very early age, and he spent his life teaching, writing, and bringing the tremendous light of the Zohar into reality for all of us. He didn't need to write all that for himself. He wrote it for us. So he channeled all that light that he was receiving forgiving, for actual practice by fulfilling the mitzvot of not only learning the Torah but bringing it out and teaching it. So
Okay,
I think
thank
it's
you so much.
that you just you would channel it through the mitzvot. Yes.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Shalom.
Very good. Great questions. All right.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Bye.